What's up everyone, this is Bacon here, and today we have another AFK Companions video. We are going to be looking at the campaign and how to best progress and move forward in campaign, and I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks on how to do that. If you've already watched the Fork Fate video, there will be some similarities, but there will be some unique tips that are only relevant to campaign, so make sure you watch through this. And before I jump into things, I just want to give a quick plug. I just made a AFK Journey account on a different channel, and I'm basically coming back from playing the game about a year ago. I haven't played since, and I made a new account, and I'm just having fun with it. And so if you want to watch some of my AFK Journey content, make sure that you check that out and subscribe. Currently only have one video on it, but if you're into Journey, I know there's some overlap between players, so make sure you check that out. Appreciate y'all, and thanks for watching. So when forming your team with your units, there's a few things, and they might seem basic, that you want to consider. One, are you having any bonuses here? So for example, do you have 3, 4, 5 units of the same faction to get those high-end bonuses? 5 and 4 aren't really like huge. Like, I mean, if you can work them out, like, that's great. But I would say that's not always like a requirement. I would say aim for having at least 3. Having 3-2 is always really nice, where you have like this. You get the whole set right here, which is actually just the 5. It's not the 3-2. A 3-2 would look more something like this. That's always nice, but it's not necessary. So as you're building, just make sure you have some sort of bonuses here, because the bonuses do help and can help. Keep in mind, there are some times when you might have a team that has 0 bonuses and they're pushing hard and they're doing well, and that's okay too. That's the first thing I would consider. The next thing I would consider is looking at the other team and seeing which units have those really game-changing ultimates. Euron pulls everyone near him. That can be a really game-changing one. If I find myself stuck in a wave with him, I normally use Nara to pull him, and so we can kill him before he can get his ult off. So I'd put her there, pull him in, kill him. You don't have to worry about it. You have to also look at their Naras. That's a unit that's in a lot of waves and can pull your carries and kill them right away, which obviously is not ideal. So make sure you're positioning whoever's getting pulled to be someone who's either tanky or has a lot of sustain, someone who you can afford to lose or can survive for a while. Normally, I like to throw in like a Brutus or something to get pulled by her, but there's a lot of options that you could look into as well. The next thing that you can consider, and this is not on the high priority list at all, but you can look at the factions that you're going against. So this team is primarily Wilders, which means they'll be weak to Maulers. Now, say I was like, okay, I'm going to throw a Mauler team together, and I'm just going to go boom, 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 boom. Like, obviously, I'll have the factional advantage here, but because these are not my best units, I only have one Ascended unit, and it's a Brutus. Like, it's not going to do well, obviously. You can see my power score is like almost a million below what it should be. And it's so faction bonuses aren't the end-all be-all by any means, but it is something to consider if you're trying to really like get through a wave that you're struggling with. Maybe there's a lot of units on your team that have a big disadvantage that you want to consider switching up a little bit. I think that's a good approach to take with campaign. The next thing that can be extremely helpful with campaign is using formations. So you can look at formations and you can look at what other people have done that are on your friends list, on your server, and which ones are the most popular ones. So for example, I'm going to go to popular. I'm going to look at Alex's, see what he did. Okay, I don't have an Awakened Solace, so I'm going to be like, probably not going to do this one. Don't have Awakened Solace. Okay, this one I could probably do. So let's go ahead and just click Use, and it'll auto-populate my units onto the field. Now, another thing to consider is they automatically use your units and not your teammates. And so, for example, they put my Daemon here. I'm going to remove her and put, or him, and put my teammate's Daemon because his is better. Otherwise, everything else looks good to go. It also doesn't auto-populate the pet, so you'll have to manually just check and see what they use if that's important to you. They apparently didn't use a pet at all, so I'm just going to use the owl. And then let's see how this works. Voila. Cleared it first try. Super easy. This won't always work, obviously. Sometimes you have to auto it and just let it keep refreshing and going over and over again. But that's just a really easy way to see which comps work for specific waves. Because like I mentioned before, every wave is totally different in campaign, and there isn't really like a best comp necessarily. Like this isn't like some OP comp, but because of where Nara was positioned, where Rowan is, like everyone's specific spot is really important in this situation. One thing to add to this is that if you have a partner in campaign who is farther along than you, you can literally go and see what thing they used for that wave. And technically all these units will probably be available to you between your units and his units unless he hasn't shared one of these with you. But chances are if he's using his best units, you're gonna have access to these. And so you can see here, I can literally use this formation. And these are all units that I have that he has let me use as well. So for this one, I want to use his Rosaline because, yeah. But besides that, like everything else is mine. But I wouldn't have known about this formation that would work well without looking and see what my partner used to get through this wave. And so that's something that's super underrated and definitely something you should utilize if you have a partner who is kind of ahead of you and pushing strong. Pets are kind of a weird thing where there's just a bunch of them. They have different skills. And a lot of times people have no idea what the heck to do with them. So right now, the best two pets are considered the owl and then the deer. I don't know their official name, so we're just gonna call them owl and deer. Those are the two best, but keep in mind, it might just depend on which ones you have ascended the highest. So if you don't have the deer ascended, say you only have an orange, but you have an ascended white ball orb guy, go ahead and use the white orb guy because he's going to give your team better stats and just better value than what a lower level one would do. Also keep in mind, every unit has a different faction that it buffs. So for example, Puffball, the defense of all light bearer heroes and the formations increased by 48%, which that's a really big buff. Like the 48% is high. Same with HP, 18%. And so make sure that if you are struggling, you're not really sure what's going on, you can always take a look and see which pets can buff certain factions. This one's Celestial and Hypogene, Wilder, and these will be grayed out if there's no one on the team benefiting from their buff, which is why in certain situations, the owl will be higher on the list and other ones it'll be lower. And so pets are kind of a fun one. You can kind of mix and match, see which ones works best for you, which one's best in your team. But at the end of the day, just having a strong pet can go really far. So just to show an example, like I mentioned earlier, how every comp is not going to work in every situation, I'm going to use the same exact comp as before and see how it works in this situation. So let's just go ahead and battle. And so you can see at first it looked decent, but I just can't get through the shielding that's going on, and eventually I'm just going to lose here. Eventually. Yep, there we go. So eventually I'm going to lose. So the shields just are too much for me, and so maybe I want to think about someone who might be good against shield units, or maybe I want to consider moving my Nara to a different spot because she ended up pulling Shield Man here because she teleports across the other side of the field at the beginning. That's another thing you want to consider is units that like teleport to the other side at the beginning of the battle. You want to make sure your carry units are not across from them, or else they're just going to die right away. And what's the point of having a carry unit if it's just going to die at the beginning of every battle? Another piece of advice is just make sure that your armor is decent and upgraded. At this point, I'm only upgrading my mythic armor that has a faction bonus on it, except for this 1-star here. I'm not upgrading my yellows. That's personal preference, just because I don't want to waste my money on it. But you can see here, 5 stars, none of these here. But for some of you, using that 1 extra star on a yellow item might push you over the edge. It just depends. Armor is important, but it's not going to just like magically change your team if you do go from 1 upgrade to 2 or whatever. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. You also want to make sure that your units that are being used the most are equipped with the best armor. It doesn't make sense to have my best armor on Tassie, who is maybe used like once every 5 waves. Make sure you have your carries with the best armor. That way they can do what they do best, and that's carry. My last piece of advice, and this might seem obvious, but use the auto battle function. Once you unlock the auto battle function around like the 6th, 7th chapter, somewhere around there, it is super important to just like keep cranking that thing. Sometimes the first time you try something, it's not going to work. Might as well just let your phone sit there and auto battle for 10 turns to see if maybe you get lucky, maybe a certain unit crits, and that is what you needed to carry the battle. Sometimes it's just you have to keep hitting your head in the wall until you can get through that stage. There have been so many times where I'll be like checking my phone, it'll say 0 waves passed, come back like 10 minutes later, and it's like 12 waves passed because it got through that one wave, and now we're just cruising through a bunch of campaign waves. Sometimes there are waves that are just a lot harder than others, but once you get through them, it's kind of easy sailing for a little bit. Keep in mind, a lot of these things can be applied directly to the King's Tower and other faction towers for that matter. So you can use the same ideas and same concepts to break through, copy formations, make sure you're not getting hooked by certain units, so on and so forth, and make sure you're pushing as much as you can and want to in the King's Tower. The King's Tower has a ton of resources, so you should definitely apply these same concepts for this as well. So that is it with my tips and tricks video on the campaign. Hopefully you found something out that was helpful. I know some of these things seem obvious, but some newer players might not know about them. And there might be 1 or 2 things you didn't know about, like the copying the formation thing or the pet bonuses, stuff like that. But hopefully there was something that you found valuable. But I appreciate y'all. Like always, hope you have a great rest of your day. And make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and look forward to future content. Peace.